Call the regular City Council meeting of October 3rd, 2018 to order at 7:10. Please join me in pledging the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Copeland.
Here.
James Burton.
Here.
Ken Jones is absent. Jeff Gard.
Here.
Melina Meyer.
Here.
Ann Schaefer.
Here.
David Allison.
Here.
James Weiss.
Here.
And Olivia Carroll.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Move to approve the regular agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda will stand as submitted. Does council have any conflicts of interest to disclose? Hearing none. We don't have any communications by visitors directly. We have lobbyist John Bitney here tonight. He'll just speak under audience comments. We have no guest speakers tonight. So are there any audience comments this evening?
That's you, Don.
You could just state your name for the record.
Thank you. Is this a 3-minute time limit? Is that the recommended amount?
Plus or minus.
Okay, I heard it. My name's John Bitney, and I am under contract for the city as basically your lobbyist down in Juneau. I've been doing that since January of 2011. Typically, I focus on activities in the session and your legislative priorities down there, but one of the things that has come up before that has come up again, and I think it was important to raise at tonight's discussion, is the issue of redistricting. I've got some action items that I'd like to discuss with you kind of at the end of my comments here, and hopefully at that time I'll kind of explain the timing issues on this. But what I kind of would like to do is just kind of launch into briefly what redistricting is, a little bit of what happened, Cordova's experience with redistricting in the past, and then kind of tie that into what some of the action items are, and kind of explain why I'm here tonight in this regard. Redistricting, a lot of folks call it reapportionment. It's, but under Alaska's constitution and statute, it's called redistricting. They mean the same thing, where every decade, the federal census counts how many people there are, and then states go through the process of taking that population count and figuring out how to draw legislative districts so that people have, one person, one vote, and essentially have the same population in each and every district. So regions aren't misapportioned, or people, in theory, have an equal voice in their government. What's coming up is that obviously the census will occur in 2020, but under the state's constitution, what they do is they set up the redistricting board to address that, is required to be appointed, and they will begin the process before September of next year. So the governor that's coming into office here after this next general election will appoint 2 members of that board. It's a 5-member board. Then after he or she, but in this case there's no female candidates, but appoints those first 2, the Senate President appoints a person, the House Speaker appoints a person, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court appoints a person. And then they begin the process of drawing up those districts. To just kind of summarize real quickly how that works is their first focus is primarily to be in compliance with federal laws. And the first law that they look to is making sure that under the Department of Justice rules that they don't diminish minority representation in the legislature. So to summarize that real quickly, what they do is they draw the Bush districts first to make sure that they do not diminish the number of primarily Alaska Native, in this case, is what we're talking about, legislators. Then they began to get into more of what we would think of in terms of the state requirements for the one person, one vote, and those sorts of issues. For Cordova, where it gets, if I would say tricky, if you will, is that you're located kind of in a part of region of the state where you've been moved to southeast at times, you've been moved to the interior at times, you've bounced around a little bit pretty much on every one of these efforts. And so you have a lot at stake here. And to kind of give you an idea, generally what you're looking to do is you want to be in a district where you carry the political clout. And to kind of give you a couple of different examples, you had a 10-year period where Cordova was in then House District 5, where the district started here with Cordova on the north end during the the early 2000s, and went south from here, included Haines and Southeast Island community. So we had Bill Thomas from Haines was the legislator from here, and Cordova was the largest community in that district. So therefore, I think it's fair to say that we remember Bill Thomas as taking good care of Cordova. We were fortunate that not only was Cordova the largest community in that district, but he was also chairman of the finance committee at a time when the state had money. So, you know, that's sort of you know, just in the raw politics of things, that's a good position to be in. Now to kind of get into what happened then in 2011 and 2012 is that Southeast Alaska lost population and the Valley of Mat-Su gained population. And so we were told right up front that there was no way that we were going to be able to maintain a district where we were connected to Southeast. The first go-around that we saw from the Redistricting Board in 2011 proposed 2 districts, one that had Cordova being the south tip of the House District, and then going over to Valdez, including Valdez, going up the Richardson Highway, getting Delta, and down the Glen Highway all the way to just the outskirts of Palmer, including Sutton, and then even looped around and got Talkeetna. And then there was a second proposal that went basically straight across Prince William Sound, got Whittier, went into Girdwood. I believe Seward and Hope might have been in there too, and even touched upon some of the neighborhoods in the upper hillside area in Anchorage. At the time, Mayor Callander was the mayor, and you know, I think communicated that and said that those were not optimal things. And so we then went back to the board, invited the board to come to Cordova and have a public hearing, and they did. And we ended up successfully arguing that the best option for us at that time was to come up with the district that we have now, which has us paired with Kodiak. And that's where we are today. The argument we used tied to language in state law and the Constitution, where we said we had much more of a socioeconomic connection with Kodiak than we did with Valdez, Delta Junction, Palmer, and to some extent Girdwood and Anchorage, in terms of this is a fishing community, this is a marine highway community, as opposed to those communities that have other socioeconomic concerns, which whoever the legislator would have been under a district like that, they would have been conflicted and split in their advocacy in the legislature in terms of trying to cover a lot of different interests in that regard. So regardless of, you know, how you may or may, you know, feel about that sort of thing, was the option that we saw best. And so, you know, here we are, and we're about to go back through this process again. And I thought that it's timely tonight to talk about it before we go to Juneau, is because a couple of things is that when I hear, you know, there's conversations going on about, you know, possible borough formation going on, 1, and 2, the election's coming up, and then immediately following the general election in November, the House and Senate will begin to caucus amongst themselves to figure out what their organization will look like and choose a speaker and a president. So I think it would be good to I'm happy to do it myself, but I don't want to do it without having this conversation with you folks to talk to whoever our legislators are. I'm assuming we know it's going to be Senator Stevens again on the Senate side because he's not up for re-election, and I would say probably Louise Stutes seems to be front running in her race, but to let them know that when they go to organize and choose a presiding officer, that in those conversations, they talk about a lot of different things that they want to see in that organization, and they typically talk about, what do we want for the budget? What do we want? What are our priorities? One of them has to be redistricting, and to make them aware in having those conversations that those presiding officers are cognizant of their power in there to select board seats on the redistricting board, and that those seats recognize coastal communities, if you will, commercial fishing communities, and that they're not sort of rail belt centric in whoever those appointments are. Also, in the terms of the conversations about borough formation, just to make you aware that in having those conversations, to just sort of be mindful that as we go through this process, borough formations can happen, cannot happen. We don't know how that's going to go, but we know redistricting is going to happen. And so I think it's wise to just sort of ask people their agenda if they have an agenda in regards to redistricting, as well as whatever they're talking about doing and advocating for in terms of borough formation. It's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just, I think it's good to be mindful that we don't want to have to who knows where the redistricting effort's going to go, and not have to sort of walk some of our comments back if someone throws a proposal at us that we'd like to see something different, and we don't want to have something in progress because any efforts or talk or proposals for a borough, the guarantee of the redistricting board will be made aware of them. And so just be mindful of that. And it's not to say that, again, I want to stress, I'm not trying to dissuade anyone from having conversation, but I think it's just wise to go into them knowing that this other conversation about redistricting is coming, and we're going to need to be engaged in that. The action items that I wanted just to talk about again were just to say that I think it would be good to, I'd like to just communicate to our legislators and in my conversations with them that I've spoken to you about this, and that we would like to see them be mindful of in their organizational efforts in selecting presiding officers, make them aware that they would like to see them use their appointment powers in picking redistricting board members to make sure we're covered here. Just to talk just briefly about that a little bit, what it says is that the governor goes first to pick 2, so we'll see who the new governor is, or if the governor gets reelected, however that goes. But they have to pick, out of the 5, they have to pick at least 1 from every judicial district in the state. And typically what happens is that while the governor does go first, there is some coordination about making sure, well, I'm the governor, I'm going to tell the president and the speaker, I'm going to pick 1 from this judicial district and 1 from here. And so there is a little bit of coordination. So again, to get back to, we just want our legislators to be, have that on the table in their conversations about organizing who the president and the speaker is. And just the other 2 items that I would just suggest is, of course, as a city, just encourage people here in Cordova to participate and get counted in the census. I think that's real important. You want to get your population numbers up as high as you can. And I think also we just, in conversations with other communities and municipalities in this area, we'll need allies, because one thing that is guaranteed in the redistricting process is there will be litigation. There always has been litigation, and you just don't know who it's going to come from. Cordova, the city of Cordova actually was a litigant on redistricting, I believe on the 1980-81 process. So this community has been involved in that. So But more, again, with the election coming up, I wanted to have that conversation with our legislators immediately following the election, and thought it was best to at least come to you and at least make you aware of this issue before I did something like that. And just appreciate your time, and I'm happy to talk about anything you want to talk about.
What was the other item, John? You said the census and count.
Well, in talking to other communities, I think you want allies. Like, for example, when we went through it before, we worked a little bit with the Southeast Conference.
Yeah.
And worked with some of those folks. I think we also want to be thinking about, at some point we're going to want to think about possible board members, because names, what I'm getting at in talking with other communities is in Southeast Conferences, you kind of find out who the front runners are for board seats.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm driving at there is who are we going to who we might be involved in nominating someone. I don't know if someone from Cordova wants to do this. But, there's people that will sort of rise up, and then there's campaigns to support people for those appointments, and that's kind of what I'm driving at. Once that is all done, a year from now, we'll have other conversations about, we want to invite the board to come to Cordova. I think that made a real difference. But that's something for next year once the board is up and running and beginning to have public hearings.
Gotcha. So, council, any thoughts or any objections, I guess, to Whitney kind of working with our legislators and getting our voice and concern regarding redistricting out kind of early in the process?
Board of professional opinion.
What's the timeline, John, on redistricting?
The board is required to be appointed by September of next year. The census occurs the following year in 2020, and then the board will begin to downloads that data and begins to draw, if you will, and then they try to have the new districts formed in time for in this case it would be where are we here, 2022 would be the next election where those new districts would be in place.
So you wouldn't change districts before the election, because then you'd be represented by someone else that you hadn't voted, right? It's after the next election is then when those districts would be put into place, or you would vote in the
Vote
district.
in your new one
Okay.
in November of 2022.
In 2022, Cordova will be in a new district. Now, it may look a lot like the current one. We don't know at this point, but there will be a new district.
What's the rough size of a district population-wise?
Under the state's current population, it's about 18,000 people per district. And then, of course, the other issue, and again, I'm talking about house districts. So the secondary issue in that is then we get paired with another house district for our senator. That's kind of, so it's not just your house district here, there's another house district that Cordova isn't even a part of that we sort of pay attention to because that's where our senator could come from.
So Cordova is really interesting. We have, in some state divisions, we're in the Southeast District and we're represented out of Juneau, somewhere in the Northern District out of Fairbanks, somewhere in South Central District out of Anchorage, and we're in the Valdez Cordova Census District, so like the Forest Service funds get split between us and Valdez. Right now, Valdez population is dropping, ours is climbing, so we're getting a little bit bigger share of those timber receipts. John, could you give us, since we have it here, just give us kind of a brief crystal ball on what you think the legislature makeup could look like, and maybe just kind of a guess on what the financial outlook for the state might look like over the next couple of years?
Well, I will. Again, I'm just political prognosis, so I won't try to take too long because on something like that, everybody's an expert, right? But I think everybody reads the same newspapers and sees that the polling data shows that the governor's race right now is leaning towards former Senator Dunleavy seems to be leading in the polls, and so there's seems to be a likelihood that we may have a new governor and a new administration. We're obviously 5 weeks from finding out if that's the case or not. Getting into the legislature, though, there will be a majority of Republicans in the Senate, but you have sort of some outliers in the Republicans who are, I'll just call them the far right, there's a split in the Republicans, if you will, and so there's going to be a coalition. It's just a matter of which way it shades, how far right or in the middle. The race that sort of is going to really determine that, I think, is most folks are looking at the Scott Kawasaki, Pete Kelly race up in Fairbanks. If Scott Kawasaki, the Democrat, beats Pete Kelly, the Republican Senate president, that really tips the scale towards having to include a lot more Democrats into a majority coalition. So that will make a huge difference in the balance. On the House side, it's much the same. You have probably a majority, more than 21, if you will, of Republicans, but you have a lot of, again, far right outliers on the Republican side, primarily in Matsu, that have sort of split the Republican side. And so if the numbers kind of go the way it's looking right now, it's just a matter, it's going to be a coalition, but again, it just gets into, does it shade a little bit left or shade a little bit right? And to get into your budget discussions, the big issue on the state level remains the permanent fund dividend, and how, because now, as we talked about at the start of last session, the big issue was how much the permanent fund earnings were going to come into the state budget to to pay for government, and well, we're getting $1,600 this week, and that conversation is going to be the same. I guess the good news, if you want to call it that, is that the price of oil, I think, hit $85 yesterday. Most folks see it going up. If it averages in the north of $80, with the state's budget as it's set right now, it's going to balance. And the stock market doing what it is, the earnings reserve account of the permanent fund is still hovering, in the $15–18 billion mark. So the state has the money to increase the dividend for those folks who are pushing now for the dividend to go back to full funding, or however you want to characterize that, and still have funds for them to use towards the cost of the government. So you touched on that. We talked a little bit earlier before the meeting about that. So the state's conversations about taxes seems to be taking a backbench with those two circumstances on the table, and the state, I think, is also, legislators that I've talked to are admitting that the capital budget that they've had over the last 5 years is woefully inadequate, and they want to see that some funds put into the capital budget here next year.
Any other questions, Councilor? Okay, well, thanks for coming out. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any other audience comments regarding agenda items? Okay, seeing none. Chairpersons of boards and commissions. Do we have CCMC or school board? Doesn't look like it. So student council's report. Olivia.
So cross country finished their season with a powerful run at state, most notably Anika Woodsoe, the Region 2 Queen of Running, finishing in 24th place out of 135 girls at the state 3A level, which is the most competitive race in Alaska. But we had an amazing school season, and the school and our coach could not be prouder of the runners this year. Volleyball's last home games are on Friday night. They will play Bartlett best out of 5, and Bartlett will be shadowing the players tomorrow to get a bigger look at smaller schools. Calendars and produce orders for the music program are due on Friday. Find a music student or head to the school where you can easily pick one up and write Olivia Carroll under the student responsible for sales section.
Abby Bourgeois.
I don't know, Olivia Carroll. And so we have a picture here in our new gym floor with some signatures from student council members, because we're so grateful for all your funding, and we get so many compliments from like the community members, the students, the faculty, just expressing their gratitude over that, so thank you. And I have some questions from the student council about the borough. Am I ask them here? Should I wait till the agenda item?
Sure, you can put them on the record and take a look.
Okay. So how would funding be appropriated under a borough system to schools that have diversified needs? Would we all be under one school district, or would we keep our school district and the borough would just appropriate money where it's needed? Would we have one school board for Cordova and all the other places as a borough, or would we have a combined school board? And if we had a combined school board, how would communication work between them? Would our graduation requirements change? How would the borough affect students, and how would the borough affect teachers?
Okay, good questions.
And can you send those to me in an email maybe? Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion maybe on that? Can we maybe invite the student council to have a representative to be on the city council or the borough advisory committee that we had, or just do the invitation that they're allowed to participate and be a part of that combination or process and bring forward these questions? I think they're good questions.
Council?
If that's something you guys would be interested in.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I'm seeing
Yeah.
heads shake, so.
I'll add them to my notices for those meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Olivia, if you want to take that back and just see if there's a representative on student council or the students would like to participate in those conversations.
I kind of thought about it too when we were talking about the comp plan and the people, if they wanted to be part of it and see how the committee works, and they might have some new interesting ideas.
Okay. Good idea. All right, thank you for your report. Okay, we just have one item on the consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull that onto the regular agenda? Okay, not hearing so, we'll just do a roll call vote.
Sorry, he's showing me a picture.
Consent calendar.
Oh,
Okay.
this picture.
Can't see the floor.
Did somebody hand this out?
Yeah.
Yeah, Olivia did.
Oh, I
And the
missed that
students
part.
signed that.
Sorry, okay.
Just grateful for the repairs.
So on the consent calendar, Ken Jones is absent. Jeff Gard,
Yes.
James Weiss,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
James Burton,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes.
David Allison.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Thank you.
Move to approve the minutes of September 19th, 2018 council regular meeting.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? All in favor of approving them?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they're approved as submitted. We don't have bids to consider, so reports of officers. Mayor's report, I just want to mention the Alaska Shellfish Producers Association is going to have their annual meeting in Cordova. And we can thank Rod Jensen and the local shellfish producers who went to those meetings and really put in a plug for having that meeting in Cordova to thank. And those are great. You know, there's big attendance. Those groups spend money in town, and it's a positive economic boost. So I think it's great that our citizens are cognizant of that and proud of this facility and our community hosting those meetings.
When will that be?
I don't have a date yet. I'm going to touch base with Rod tomorrow. I want to say it's coming up pretty soon, next couple months. And also we do have our bid in with the North Pacific Fisheries Marine Council to also host a meeting here. They've never met here. They have a rotating meeting, and I think that's the spring, like February meeting. But Brittany mentioned kind of a state outlook and the potential for a capital budget as an element to that too. We might finally start to see some capital budget. So might behoove us, especially as we look through our legislative priorities, to think about CAPSIS submittals, which is to get those, make sure we get a submittal online into those for our projects, so that if a capital budget does come up, I think they pretty much require that you have to have those submittals in. And then I did send a letter of support that I mentioned at the last meeting to the Prince William Sound, sent it to the EVOS trustee council, supporting funding for a new Prince William Sound Science Center facility. So I'll get a copy of that letter to you through Susan. I just got that out Thursday, so. And that's all I had at this time, unless there's any questions.
I was a week ahead of you on my letter. I got it to him a week ahead of you.
I know you did.
You were gone.
You were way out in front.
What was the name or title of that meeting that you said that was coming to Cordova?
I got it in by the deadline. I think it's the Alaska's Shellfish Producers Association or something like that.
And what was the dates?
I don't have those yet. Rod Jensen participated in the meetings and encouraged him to come here and got the commitment. So I'm scheduled to meet with him tomorrow and get the details. And I can get those out to council through Susan. So it's pretty exciting though. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Okay. Manager's report.
Of course, we're dealing with Rich leaving. His going away party is tomorrow out at the shop. So I think it's 12 to 1:30. So it says bring a dish to eat, so or something to grill. So if I don't know that council's invited, but I guess I'm invited to go out there if you want to. So
Bad engineer jokes.
huh?
I'm gonna bring bad engineer jokes.
Yeah, there you go. There's gonna be a little roast of him and so forth, so and that'll be good. We're really just kind of winding down from the summer and getting geared up for winter, you know, all the changeover, the blades, the equipment, all that stuff is starting, so it's a real busy time for everybody getting everything changed over, so. Dealing with the recruitments, the budget, just trying to get our feet set under us for what's gonna look like the next 3 months and make sure everything goes smoothly. Melvin's doing a good job over at the hospital. I've already gotten some really nice words from them on his work over there, so that seems to still be working very well. The IT's not going so well, but that's going very well. But just really switch over time of the year for us. I'll be gone the 19th through the 29th of October, and AML conference is the 12th through the 16th. So I'll be gone to that. And we'll talk a little bit about dates for comp plan and those kinds of things coming up here under pending agenda items. It's in Anchorage.
Hey, you reminded me, I'm gonna be back in DC October 16th and 17th. I'm gonna go back a couple days early to meet with our congressional delegation. And again, there's some new bills now that do have harbor funding, the new WARDA bill, and some other bills that they've passed recently. And also there's starting to talk again about infrastructure investments. So also, I've had a couple of comments on the road maintenance, positive comments about the road maintenance that's been done, and I know council invested in that road patcher that's I think has really worked out great. I've seen at least out in our area on the chip seal and everything, but I think Councilman Allison and Burton and others that have been on council for in years past, we could hardly get through a single meeting without having letters or public comments about the terrible condition of the roads and the potholes and everything. And I think it's really been a positive aspect that our roads are in much better shape. It's great to see the fishing game corner and everything fixed and all the recent work that got done. So
Adams is so nice, you can just go around the block.
And we do. And the kids do.
in a street legal car. All right, any questions for Manager Lanning? Okay, clerk's report. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing in his report. The city manager and clerk's evaluations. are pretty much due now, so I'm gonna be starting and expediting that process as well. So, clerk's report.
Thanks.
Welcome. On that note.
I was going to say that the city assessors are in town this week, working in here most days. And heading out and about around town, which I printed the statute just because Arnie said, there's a statute that protects us. If, we are allowed to go on people's property, obviously they make every attempt to knock on doors and see people, and they're not gonna go into any buildings, but what they are checking mostly right now are anything with a building permit or that might not have been 100% complete if it had an older building permit the last couple of years. Those are the kind of buildings that they'd be looking at right now. They like to see people, they want to be able to talk to the owners, and usually everything goes well. But I thought if some people were listening today and they weren't sure about that, you might see them. So, that's about all I have to report.
Grass long.
Yeah, because we get you for your grass. Only you.
The same break if I just leave my gravel alone?
Any questions for city clerk? Okay, we have communications in the packet. As noted. And under ordinances and resolutions, we have resolution 10-18-28, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Cordova, Alaska, authorizing creation of a City of Cordova Comprehensive Plan Committee. So, council, I didn't get confirmation from.
Well, that's later.
Okay.
Filling it is
Okay.
new business. Sorry, this is just
That's right.
creating it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, move to approve resolution 10-18-28.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Councilman Allison, do you want to speak to your motion?
Well, we said we wanted a committee, and this is the first step to creating that, so here we are.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Unfinished business, council concurrence with mayor's appointments to the Prince William Sound Borough Advisory Committee. I have got 2 more names, still have 2 to fill, so making incremental progress, and I'm hoping I'll get the rest of the committees filled here in the next 5 to 10 days. Certainly by the next meeting.
Did I write the 2?
No.
No. So we have,
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to dig deep in my memory here.
Was it in the email today?
No, that was a separate list.
so we already appointed Sylvia.
Sylvia, Zeke, and Angela, and then,
So this is Barb,
and then so Haley.
Barb Jewel,
Barb
and
Jewel.
Haley.
Yeah, Haley
Haley
Hoover and Barb Jewel.
Did Dave get back to you?
Yeah, he was enough, so.
I think we only had
That's
those
all we
2
have,
this time.
so we have 2 more.
Okay,
So
so
I'm
we're
seeking
appointing,
council concurrence for appointing Haley Hoover and Barbara Jewel.
Move to concur.
A second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you, we're at 5 of 7, and I'll try to get those other 2 filled. New and miscellaneous business, council concurrence with mayor's appointments to the Comprehensive Plan Committee. So, council, this list in this email is whom I'm soliciting. I've gotten 2 have confirmed, Kathy Long and Kristen Carpenter. So I guess what I'm just asking for is concurrence with this list or not, and it'll be pending their agreement to serve.
Move to concur.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. And I would just mention if there's, in particular, if there's any names that you think would be good on this committee that I haven't considered or added, just shoot me an email or whatever, and we can try to add that. So, any discussion? A motion to concur? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
You are the ex officio council.
We don't have those yet, so. If you're interested, shoot me an email. Council action on disposal and method of disposal of Alaska State Land Survey 79-259.
Where's Kenny? He wanted this.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Allison.
I move to dispose of ASLS 79-259 as outlined in Cordova Municipal Code 5.22.060 by requesting sealed proposals to lease or purchase the property.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Councilman Allison, would you like to speak to that motion?
I'd actually like to speak against it.
Not sure you can do that. Did you make a motion?
I heard him say for purpose of discussion.
Okay.
I think this, no, just my only comment, I guess, is I take the staff recommendation. Nobody's put in for it yet. It cost a fair amount of money to advertise. Somebody can still put in requests anytime they want to, in order to decide at that point in time.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor? Those okay. Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails.
Who seconded that? Sorry.
Councilman
Okay.
Byrd.
And you never got to talk about it. It's okay.
Just want to do it.
You did one.
Okay, pending agenda. I think we just mentioned something for pending agenda.
We have, you want to schedule a joint meeting with the CCMC Authority Board of Directors and City Council.
Yes. I would prefer that meeting to be the week of November 5th, the week that is between my being gone and my being gone. I think it's important that I'm there. I think we need to have a candid conversation about a variety of the financial needs going forward, have some clarity on those issues and some changes that have occurred over the last week or so with the state. So
Prior to that meeting, we'll have all the detail.
yeah, we'll get you write-ups on everything.
Councilman Burton.
I was just thinking that that meeting should probably take place before the council work session on the 7th. These are the budgetary item that we need to deal with.
Before November 7th.
Yeah, and I think Tuesday is out because it's election day, so Monday or
Yeah,
Wednesday.
yeah, if you could do it Monday, that'd be great, or early Wednesday, whatever you like.
Well, the state election is actually upstairs. We could meet down here. It wouldn't be too conflicting. But whatever.
We might get some audience participation if they're
Oh, yeah, certainly. They'd be upstairs, yeah.
Okay, so,
Did you think you're in place of the regular work session then on the Wednesday, or you're saying before, so Monday?
Before that work
So Monday.
session.
So basically that Monday or Tuesday.
I see nothing else on that Monday, but I don't know. Am I
Yeah.
missing any boards?
Yeah, we need to spend some time talking.
Didn't you say that NVE wanted to have their facilitated meetings at some point the week of October 22nd?
Right.
Would it behoove us to have this conversation before we do that? So we have a better understanding of the situation at the hospital?
Now, the facilitated meetings are gonna go forward anyway, and they wanna switch dates. They wanna go back to the week of the 22nd of October.
Yep.
So we're gonna have those facilitated meetings, and that's more of a, I think that's more philosophical, but at some point you need to really understand the financial aspect of everything, just the global picture of this. And so
This is more of an internal meeting between CCMC and the city.
it's a combined board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, very, so is the 5th work?
I'll be gone.
5th or 6th better? 6th better?
Be gone that week.
Call in.
7th better? Prior to the regular work session?
Doesn't matter to me, Monday, Friday.
Okay,
Are we talking about like an executive session probably
yeah,
in this meeting?
yeah, I'm thinking
Not
so.
really I mean, well,
No.
it'll be open and then we go into executive session.
Well, I think we're gonna have it down and dirty.
Freaking me out. I don't know what this.
I think what Councilman Burton's kind of alluding to is that when it comes to the budget, that's one of the biggest wild cards in terms
Yeah, so let's do the 5th.
of pulling us into the ditch.
Let's shoot for the 5th at what time?
I'm wide open at
6 PM?
Let's do 6.
6 p.m. Okay.
And then, I don't know what the 22nd through the 26th looks like, but Agnew Beck is doing both processes. There are gonna be comprehensive plan meetings during that week, and there's gonna be one Cordova Council facilitated meeting, one NVE facilitated meeting, then there are gonna be 3 joint facilitated meetings by Agnew Beck during that week,
All in that week?
all in that week. So I don't know what that schedule looks like, but I'm just asking you to have in your mind the week of the 22nd, it's gonna be critical that you're there. I'm not gonna be there, but Scott and I have talked at length about our feeling about these, the direction, so he'll be able to represent that position very well, and if I need to call in from somewhere, I can as well. But I had scheduled long before this because I thought it was November 5th, the original one, so just to keep those dates open, and I told Shelley at Agnew Beck that I would remind you and kind of put up the red signal that week is very, very important for these meetings.
I'll be here the 22nd, but I'll be gone the rest of that week.
Okay,
I guess we can.
so we will send you meeting notices and get this in the hopper, and the more that can attend, the better off.
But quorums are not required and they're not taking.
Quorums are not required.
They're just,
Not taking any action.
Okay.
So, can you let me know what you mean by city facilitated and village council facilitated and then facilitated by the facilitator?
Well, Agnew Beck is gonna get all of you in a room and say, where do you see healthcare going? And they're gonna have NVE in a separate room, and they're gonna say to NVE, where do you see healthcare going? Everybody gets to speak honestly. And then they're gonna mull all that information, and they're gonna come back and get the 2 groups together at the table and say, here's what we know about the direction. Where can we find common ground? And try to help us find common ground. There are gonna be 3 of those meetings.
So, one of those, the city facilitated would just be
Just you guys.
just us and the contractor. And then the next
Yes.
day, we won't have to be at any meetings, and it'll be,
Well, there's 2 people doing this, so on the same day, they could be doing NVE and the city in separate rooms. So they're gonna try to get it, make it convenient.
and are those closed meetings of council or are those?
Those will be closed meetings.
How do we do that? I don't know that we can do that.
Yeah, that's,
Have to advertise and go into executive session.
So,
Yes.
just the week of the 22nd, we'll get you dates and keep you posted. I just need you to make it a special
Those
effort
can't
to be
be
available.
sessions without quorums.
I think
so
those
that's not gonna happen.
may have to be public, but it would just be like council, a work session. It just wouldn't have any public input.
Sure, but they might.
They'd be
in the
welcome to
room. Yeah, Okay.
observe.
could be, correct.
Well, there's gotta be an avenue by which you can honestly say where you think things are going.
Mhm.
So I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah, out loud, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's it for me.
Council, is there any, that week, it sounds like Monday's good for you, rest of the week not so much. Do any of you have any preference for earlier in the week or later in the week?
I mean, if they were here doing this too.
James and I will each be out of town and getting back on the 23rd, but we might be.
We'll be in Jack's Bay.
I'm out of town and I get back on the 24th. I get back on the 24th.
So 25, 26
Okay,
is
well-
better?
Sounds like
I don't know
later in
the
the week's
exact
better.
schedule, I just know that it's that week.
So, but you.
We'll be able to
both-
call in then.
Okay, you'll be able to call in, but you get back in town on the 23rd?
Yes.
Okay. So I think later in the week is better. But anyway, okay.
And if you're interested, I do have information that may be helpful to you as you think through this,
I'm
that
interested.
we have not talked about publicly at this point.
So I would just put on the
We get that.
pending
Yeah,
agenda.
I would like that.
Can we get that in an email? Or is it a talk?
Yeah, I can send it to you in an email.
Alright.
Yeah, I'll write up.
Can you just, under pending agenda, just general, put clerk's evaluation, manager's evaluation, so you're comfortable with.
I don't think you guys have time for that.
Fine,
Gonna have to,
Fine with me.
fine.
Let's get-
do it November 32nd.
Oh, perfect. I'm available. The Yankees won.
Okay.
To say.
That makes me want to adjourn.
We're almost there.
Anything else we're looking at pending agenda? Seeing none, audience participation. You just state your name for the record.
I'm William Deaton. Do I need to give my address too? Or?
Sure.
Yeah, 524 2nd Street. I came here to talk about, you guys were mentioning the budget, and I just wanted to show my support for syntax on marijuana. I think that you guys voted against that earlier, or you guys took that out or something, and I just wanted to show my support for that. I also wanted to voice my opposition to the formation of a borough for many reasons, but one of the most suspicious being another layer of government. Cordova does not need this. From what I understand about it, the borough would only include Whittier and Girdwood, now that Valdez and the other villages around the Prince William Sound have said they don't want to join. And I don't see that being beneficial for us. And then I also kind of have a question. I know I haven't been to any of the other meetings regarding this, but why would we spend $25,000 on a feasibility study when we're in a fiscal crisis? That doesn't make sense to me, but you guys obviously know more about that than I do, so I just wanted to voice those concerns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other audience comments? Okay, thank you, William. We appreciate the feedback. Council comments, Councilman Weiss.
None.
Okay.
Yeah, thank every board, new board member for what's getting
Volunteer.
formed. Yeah, every
Yeah. Got a lot of volunteers volunteering. Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, just echo the thank you for everyone stepping up and participating on these boards and having a seat at the table.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, thanks, John, for coming out and chatting with us tonight. Thanks, Will, for your comments. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Meyer.
Let us echo the comments said before me.
Councilman Burton.
Same, in addition to those thank yous, John, again, thank you, but also Rod Jensen for getting that meeting coming here, and to Rich Rogers for his service in Cordova, and job well done.
Councilman Garden.
No.
Okay. One other item on the agenda.
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.